A helicopter so powerful, it nearly broke the rules of aviation pricing, and nobody saw it coming. Once aviation died from high costs, someone rebuilt it from scratch and accidentally created the helicopter everyone now wants. For a long time, people thought aviation just faded away, like interest disappeared, like flying somehow became less exciting. But that's not what actually happened. Something else did. Something quieter. And honestly, way more frustrating. Back in 1978, general aviation wasn't struggling. It was exploding. In the US alone, manufacturers were producing over 17,000 aircraft every single year. That's not a niche market. That's bigger than the supercar industry at the time. Flying wasn't just for elites, it was becoming normal. And the numbers get even crazier. A brand new Cessna back then would cost around $80,000 in today's value. Sounds expensive, right? But here's the part that changes everything. It was only about 1.3 times the average salary. That meant a regular successful person could realistically aim for it. Now compare that to today. That same aircraft is nearly 6 times the average salary. Not slightly more expensive, not adjusted for inflation, completely out of reach. And slowly, everything shifted. Aircraft didn't get exciting. They got older, more expensive, less appealing. The designs barely evolved. The experience didn't improve. And over time, people stopped buying, not because they didn't want to fly, but because what they were being offered didn't feel worth it anymore. And that's the part most people miss. The demand never disappeared. The dream never went away. The industry just stopped giving people something they actually wanted. But here's the weird part. People never stopped wanting to fly. So now the real question is, if the demand was always there, why didn't anyone fix it? Because fixing it meant rebuilding the entire industry. From zero. Wait, you're watching right now but not subscribed to the channel? Go ahead and smash that subscribe button so we can move on with the video. You did? Okay, cool. Now back to the video. Here's the thing about flying. It's not just transportation. It never was. It's something else. Something almost emotional. The idea of lifting off the ground, going wherever you want, whenever you want, that doesn't fade. It sticks. Think about it for a second. No traffic, no waiting, no fixed routes. Just you, moving from one place to another like it's nothing. Almost like a magic carpet. And yeah, that sounds dramatic, but that's exactly how people imagine personal flight. And then, reality hits, because when people actually step into most helicopters today, it doesn't feel like that dream. It feels cramped, loud, mechanical, like you're sitting inside a machine, not experiencing something. And that's where the disconnect begins. Because outside of aviation, everything else evolved. Cars became luxurious, phones became seamless, technology became intuitive. People got used to comfort, design, smooth experiences. They expect things to just work. But aviation, it didn't catch up. It stayed technical, complicated, old school. So now you've got this strange gap. On one side, a timeless dream of personal flight. On the other hand, products that feel stuck decades behind. And slowly, that gap got bigger. So the real problem wasn't flying. It was that flying felt outdated. And once you realize that, everything changes. Because now the question isn't, how do we make helicopters better? It becomes something way bigger. What would a modern aircraft actually look like if it were built for today's world? And that question led to one very specific idea. And this is where it gets interesting. Because fixing aviation didn't start with engineering. It started with a question. What would people actually want if you built a helicopter today Not for pilots, not for engineers, but for modern life? The answer sounded simple. But when you put it together, it almost felt impossible. It had to look beautiful. Not aircraft beautiful, real beautiful. Like something you'd park next to a supercar and not feel embarrassed. It had to be fast. Not just technically fast, but fast enough to actually get somewhere. Around 140 knots cruise, smooth, efficient, usable. But then comes the hard part. It had to be smooth in turbulence, safe, crash-worthy. Easy enough that flying didn't feel like a full-time job. And somehow, still affordable. Not aviation affordable, actually affordable. Almost like an affordable grand tourer of the sky. And it didn't stop there. It needed to carry real people. 5 seats, luggage, enough fuel to actually travel. Not just short hops, but something you could genuinely use. Inside? It had to feel like a premium car. Digital cockpit, autopilot, clean interface, something that didn't overwhelm you the moment you sat down. Now think about that for a second. Speed, luxury, safety, simplicity, price, all in one machine. Technically, none of this was new. But combining it? That's where it gets crazy. Because if all these pieces already existed, why hadn't anyone ever put them together like this? Because of one brutal limitation. Here's the part nobody likes talking about. You can design the perfect helicopter on paper. You can make it fast, smooth, beautiful, all of it. But the moment you try to actually build it, one thing quietly destroys everything. The engine. If you want real performance in a helicopter, there's no shortcut. You need a turbine engine. That's just how it works. Power, reliability, smoothness. It all comes from that. But here's the problem. Turbine engines are insanely expensive. Not slightly expensive. Not a premium feature expensive. They take up such a huge portion of the aircraft cost that by the time you even start adding anything else, you've already lost. Now add avionics, flight systems, displays, controls, integration. Suddenly, the price explodes. And this is where most aircraft die, not in design, but in pricing. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Engineers don't decide what something costs. The market does. And right now, the market isn't willing to pay what traditional helicopters cost. That's why production dropped. That's why general aviation slowed down. Not because people stopped caring, but because the numbers stopped making sense. So you're stuck. You can build something amazing, or something affordable. But not both. At least, that's what everyone believed. So they did something the aviation industry almost never does. What happens if you remove the entire supply chain? Because of that decision, changed everything. And this is where things take a turn most people don't expect. Instead of working around the system, they decided to remove it. No middlemen, no traditional aerospace suppliers, no stacking margins from 10 different companies before the product even reaches the customer. Everything gets built in-house. The engine? Their own. The GT50 Turbine, designed specifically for this helicopter. Not borrowed, not modified, built from the ground up using proven ideas, but packaged differently. The avionics? Same story. But here's where it gets clever. Instead of building something overly complex, they did the opposite. Cut everything down to what actually matters. No clutter, just essential flight data, clean visuals, and a cockpit that feels intuitive. Then they paired it with something people already know, an iPad. With apps handling navigation and mapping, flying suddenly feels less like aviation and more like something familiar, almost like driving. That's the real shift. not adding more, but removing friction. And the biggest challenge? The engine. Normally, that's where companies burn billions and fail. But this time, they had an edge. They weren't starting from scratch. They were building on decades of turbine knowledge. Every past failure has already been solved. Engineering became less about guessing and more about choosing. Then came modern tools. Simulation replaced trial and error. Engineers could test airflow, heat, and stress before building anything. That alone cut years off development. Suddenly, what used to take decades became achievable. But none of that matters if no one buys it. They expected 100 sales to break even. They got nearly 1,400. That's when everything changed. This wasn't just a product anymore. It was something the market had been waiting for. The moment you step inside, something feels off. Not bad off, different. Because this doesn't feel like a helicopter. Normally, helicopters feel tight, mechanical, like you're squeezing into a machine that barely has space for you. Knees hitting panels, shoulders brushing against doors, constant noise reminding you where you are. But here, that feeling disappears. The cabin is wide, open. You can actually move, stretch your legs, sit back without adjusting every second. And the seating? It's not just placed there, it's shaped, designed to support your body, not just hold it. And then, you look outside, almost 270 degrees of visibility, massive windows, skylight above you. It feels like you're sitting inside a glass bubble, floating. You're not just traveling through the environment, you're seeing all of it. And surprisingly, it's quiet. Around 78 decibels inside. That's a normal conversation level. No shouting, no constant headset pressure, just calm. Even the airflow is personal. Individual climate controls. No one-size-fits-all temperature. And suddenly, this stops feeling like aviation. It starts feeling like a luxury car that just happens to fly. This doesn't feel like a helicopter, and that's the point. But then you move forward, into the pilot seat, and that's where it gets even more futuristic. You sit down, and instead of complexity, you see simplicity. No overwhelming panels, no confusing layout, just a clean interface. Right in front of you, a large touchscreen, around 12 inches, sharp, responsive, almost familiar, and that's intentional. Because this system wasn't taken from another aircraft. It was built specifically for this machine, from scratch, designed to feel natural the moment you touch it. Everything is where you expect it to be. Speed, altitude, direction, all clearly displayed. But then, something interesting happens. The terrain in front of you appears in 3D. Not as numbers, not as charts, as an actual visual environment. Mountains, valleys, obstacles. You see them before you even reach them, even in low visibility. And then there's the layout. Split screens, maps on one side, weather on another, traffic nearby, all updating in real time. And yes, ADS-B is there too, so you're constantly aware of other aircraft around you. But the real difference isn't the tech, it's how it feels. The controls fall naturally into your hands. The system reduces workload instead of adding to it. You're not managing a machine, you're interacting with it. Flying this doesn't feel like managing a machine. It feels like using a device. But all of this means nothing if the performance doesn't back it up. So what actually powers this thing? The part that makes everything else possible. At the center of this helicopter is something they built themselves. The GT50 turbine engine. Not borrowed, not adapted. Built specifically for this aircraft. And the numbers? They're serious. Around 400 horsepower continuously. Push it harder, and it goes to 440. And for short bursts, it hits 500 horsepower. That's not just power. That's controlled power. Because this engine isn't just strong, it's optimized, designed to work perfectly with this airframe. Smooth, efficient, reliable. Everything tuned together instead of being forced to fit. And then, there's the rotor system. Composite blades, lightweight but incredibly strong. A fully articulated hub that lets each blade move independently, which means better control, less vibration, more stability. And when all of that comes together, you don't just get performance, you get balance. The helicopter feels stable, predictable, almost like it understands what you want before you fully input it. This isn't just power, it's controlled power. But numbers don't tell the full story. Because how something feels is what really matters. And this is where everything connects. Because once you're in the air, all the specs stop being numbers. They become experienced. Cruise speed? Around 140 knots. Fast enough to actually travel, not just hover around. Range? Up to hundreds of miles. Enough for real trips, not short hops. Flight time? Around 3.5 hours. But what matters isn't just distance. It's how it feels getting there. Smooth, stable, minimal vibration. The kind of flight where you're not constantly correcting, adjusting, fighting the machine. It just works with you. But even in wind, it stays composed. And then there's the autopilot. It takes over the repetitive workload, holding altitude, maintaining direction, letting you focus on the bigger picture instead of every tiny adjustment. And just when you think that's enough, there's one more layer. If something goes wrong, the helicopter can step in. Detect the issue, find a safe landing area, and if needed, land itself. Think about that. In a situation where panic usually takes over, the machine stays calm. And this is where it stops being impressive and starts becoming revolutionary. Because now, flying isn't just exciting, it feels safe. So the question becomes, what does something like this actually cost? Because here's the part that surprises most people. Now you'd expect something like this to be completely out of reach. And yeah, it's not cheap. But it's not what people expected either. The base price comes in around $750,000. Fully equipped. Not stripped down. Not missing features. Everything included. Push it further with upgrades, and you're looking closer to $850,000. Still expensive, but here's where perspective matters. In the helicopter world, that's surprisingly low. Because traditionally, machines with this level of performance, comfort, and technology cost way more. And not just to buy, but to operate. And suddenly, this starts to feel different. It's not cheap like a car, but compared to what aviation used to cost, it feels closer than ever before, almost attainable, and that's the shift. Aviation is no longer locked behind extreme wealth. It's moving into a space where successful individuals can realistically consider it. This isn't cheap, but it's cheaper than aviation has ever felt. And that leads to one final thought. Is this the start of something bigger? Because this isn't just one helicopter. And that's what makes this so interesting. This isn't just a helicopter, it's a reset, a completely different way of thinking about flight. And maybe, just maybe, this is where personal aviation finally comes back. So what do you think? Would you fly this?